technology out there that certainly we can incorporate. I really believe, again, going back to the free enterprise, and I just think there's things out there that we can do with this that will promote safety in vehicles as we move forward. And I think that's something that we certainly need to have that conversation on. And this is not just I don't think this is just a state of Texas issue. I mean, it's a national issue, and it's something that we need to have conversation about, I think, at the national level as well.
Right. So kind of going back to some of the project-based things and updates, Ruth Henshaw with the Lens Group wanted to ask the importance of the State Highway 35 improvements for enhancing mobility and hurricane evacuation routes for the region. So I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that.
Highway 35?
State Highway 35, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know it's been, it was on the, I think it was on the kind of on the drawing board, and then there was some discussion around whether or not that would continue to have discussion. But the last I heard, there was still some discussion around trying to extend that, I think from Spur 5 down to the Beltway is the first leg, I guess, of that. When I was in on the conversations with the group, I think they had talked about trying to do this in incremental, type
right.
construction, to where you would do a portion of the roadway, and then as you move down, you do another portion of the roadway, and I really think that that was a good approach with it, because I think as people see the what the roadway does and what that provides for as far as mobility, then they get a little bit more excited about that being extended and being brought down to a different point. So I think that was a good approach, and that from Spur 5 down McCalla. I mean, McCalla is definitely a roadway that needs attention, and one that I think would benefit from that, and would also provide for a really good way for people to get downtown a lot faster and avoid that traffic along the Gulf Freeway. You could actually get off there and take that Spur 5 and hit the freeway and be downtown pretty quick.
Right. Any other kind of project, kind of off the top of your head that we kind of need to be in tune, paying attention to, kind of project updates for your region that you think is relevant as we kind of go towards the session? Yeah,
well, certainly segment B of the Grand Parkway is one that we've been, working on. We had a lot of conversation. We actually, it was taken out of the UTP, and we had to kind of garner up a lot of support for that, and there is a lot of support for that in our region. That would be, they're looking at the portion from I-45 over to 1462 in Alvin right now as the portion that we're basically kind of concentrating on. But I think that's a very important part of the transportation that we have here in the region. I think the Grand Parkway is one that we need to continue to promote and continue to work on. When they took that to the UTP, I was really upset about it. I said it was sort of like somebody building a house and they get 3/4 of the house built and then they stop. And that doesn't make any sense to anybody. So that's one that I think is a very important part of our mobility here in this region, both from a standpoint of not only from the our population growth, but also from a standpoint of our our ports and the ability to move goods and freight. You know, I'm amazed when I drive around the Beltway. You know, people said, well, y'all are just, you're going to kill all the real estate when you build a toll road. I mean, nobody's going to want to locate anything on a toll road. And now you get on the toll road and you go around and you just see these building after building after building, you know, because they want that ability to be able to move goods quickly. And I think that's very, very important that we continue to, you know, to provide for that as well, and to be able to move that freight quickly and get it onto the, you know, to the interstates and to roadways that need to get to market. You know, the other, I think the other big conversation is going to be around the I-45 north. That discussion is ongoing right now. I'm a ex officio member of the Transportation Policy Committee, and I'm on that. I'm sitting on that subcommittee that's discussing an MOU on that North Freeway, I-45, and you know, I think that's something that as we continue to grow, you know, we've got to figure out ways to be able to expand our roadways and do it in a way that you know, we can do it and not disrupt communities as we do that. But and I think that goes with a lot of future planning on the roadways when it comes to right of way and things like that. That we need to have those discussions about, you know, that this roadway might not be everything that you need forever, and I think that's something that we need to have those discussions around. And I know those are tough. You know, that's money. I mean, you know, that takes money out of other projects when you're trying to do that. But I think future planning is really, really important. You know, as we have these conversations around road projects.
Right. I think so. As you were talking, I was trying to jot down notes because you were a couple of different highlights. So I'm gonna jump around a little bit. So just bear with me. But one piece was the tolling component, right, of the conversation with Grand Parkway. So yes, that was a lot of back and forth, and you know, it makes me wonder what the conversation will look like with tolling, given the reality of some of the budget issues that we're going to have and some of the funding needs that we will have, and needing to have more options in the toolbox, right? So I think there still will be a bit of a push and pull for tolling, but I wonder if it kind of softens the conversation. Carrie Fulton with LAN was also asking a follow-up kind of in that same category. Do you think that because of COVID and the budget issues, that it does lend itself to have a better conversation about public-private partnerships, where in the past, those conversations were really curtailed pretty quickly?
I think so. I mean, I hope so. You know, the worst thing in the world to me is, you know, I mean, is for us to not do anything, and that is where you know, I think the Texas legislature and I'm not bragging because I'm part of it, but I think we have really you know, tackled some really tough issues, you know, when it comes to water and some of the things that you know, really the flooding infrastructure that we worked on in the last session, and things that are really planning for, you know, future. And I don't think we can not have a conversation around you know, these partnerships as we move forward in transportation. You know, I just again go back to the free enterprise system, and you know, I'm amazed at some of the things that are being discussed today. I was watching a thing last night on TV, but they were talking about, you know, IBM and some of the things they're working on, and they're talking about, you know, the computer ability to capture CO2, which is way beyond anything I understand. But I started thinking about that. I started thinking, you know, there's a push on, you know, fossil fuels and getting rid of fossil fuels and transportation. Well, what if the vehicle could actually, with a computer, consume its own carbon dioxide as it goes along and produce energy that then could be used to to propel the car. I mean, those are things that I think are out there, and that's what excites me about these partnerships and these discussions. I think we certainly have to have them, and I certainly think that we can't be closed-minded and about it, and I think we have to be reasonable. We have to be thoughtful. We have to be, the ability to listen to other people and other people's opinions, and not just be, so dogmatic about it that we don't think outside the box a little bit. I think that's what's. I mean, to me, that's Texas. I just think we get things done. That I love this saying. If you want something done, tell a Texan it's impossible. And I think that's what I really love about our state and what what we've been able to do.
Right. So a couple of thoughts related to the public-private partnership conversation, the tolling conversation. There's a lot of good numbers out there when we talk about investing in transportation, right? So you mentioned the Grand Parkway. Everyone said that you wouldn't have development kind of around there. Boom, here we go, right? So the numbers are that, it's about for every dollar, right, invested in transportation, it's about a $3 to $6 return on investment. That's not insignificant. So we're looking, you're talking about economic development, whether it's transit-oriented development, it's kind of the toll-related, road development that happens. So, and then of course that means jobs, right? So the other number that I always appreciate is for every $1 billion invested in infrastructure, it generates approximately 13,000 jobs, kind of directly, indirectly associated with that particular investment. So those are good reminders when we're talking about, when we're talking to our leaders and we're talking to the decision makers and just community leaders, when we talk about transportation, whether it's indexing the gas tax to raise more money, or we have to have an equal sign next to it, right? It's not an up increase here. It's an equal sign, this many jobs and this much return in the economy. So that's huge for that conversation.
No, I agree. I was on the economic development board here in Pearland, and that's the way we work through a lot of those. When we were trying to attract someone, we looked at it from a standpoint of how many jobs was it going to create, and that kind of work towards what we were willing to be able to put into incentives in trying to get that business here. And I think the same sort of conversation needs to be had. I'm a field of dreams kind of guy. I think if you build it, they will come, and I think that's true with roadways, and we should look at them as economic development tools. And I've harped that with TxDOT constantly, that we don't do a good job of tooting that horn, if you will, about how many jobs it's created and how much tax base it's brought in, and the different things that have occurred because of these roadways that are being built. So, people just look at the dollar amount that it costs to build a road, but they don't look at the long-term, I call it investment, that will occur around that roadway, and what that kind of impact that has on our community and in our state.
Right. Yeah, agreed. So also following up in the toll conversation, not controversial at all, but from your vantage point, kind of your opinion, assessment of the refinancing that they're doing with the Hectra tolling, and kind of where that stands. Thoughts on that?
Well, I for one believe that, I believe that the money should go back into transportation. I think that is, I think every dollar that you have there, the people that pay those tolls are, I think, looking at that from a standpoint of, I'm investing in future transportation, and I don't think that money should be diverted from transportation. I think it's I think you're even complicating, the conversation around tolling and the public-private partnerships and that sort of thing when you do that, because then that gives the what I call the antis the ability to use that as part of the argument. Is, well, see, here you go, you're siphoning that money off and using it for other purposes, and I don't think that's at all what it was structured to do. And I, for one, I just don't think that's the proper use of that money. I think we need to address that.
Right. Well, and there's movement, I know, with the AG's office with that. I think this week there's reexamination because of they have to approve the issuance of the bonds. So there's I think
Right.
There will be a longer discussion about it. So I appreciate your perspective on that. And we certainly feel, strongly that if you're collecting it for a transportation activity, it should go back into transportation. So that's, it's just kind of good policy.
Sure. Yeah.
We work so hard at the state level to end diversions. And that's kind of what this feels like. So really appreciate your perspective. You did mention your comment,
Sure.
Did you want to add something? I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't know if I lost you there.
No.
Okay.
I'm just agreeing with you.
Okay, so you mentioned, if you build it, they will come. And I think some would agree with you, some would not, as it relates to transit. And Jay Crosley also wanted kind of a follow-up question in your comment too about offering a lot of options for people, right? And so transit is another option, and transit is not rail on the road. It can be BRT, it can be, buses. So, and certainly what I have what's really been helpful is in more rural communities, it's often senior transit. It's access for them to get the things that they need. It's not kind of the heavy rail transit that most people would think about. It comes in all shapes and forms. So with that, we still don't have a dedicated stream from the state for transit. Also, we're pretty restricted with the ability to do anything additional locally to raise funds locally for transit. So what is the path to navigate that and find a funding stream? And kind of from your vantage point, TAG has advocated that not a mandate to raise the sales tax, but the ability to raise the sales tax locally. We can't even if tomorrow we said, yep, we all agree, we're going to fund transit with it, we're going to fund infrastructure with it. We don't even have the ability to do that because we're capped. So thoughts on that? It's a lot, but however you want to attack.
Well, that's one of those questions I would say, Mr. Chairman, what do you have to think about that?
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think we're probably a little bit. I don't know that we're there yet in that discussion. One of the things that keeps getting brought up with many of these programs is the ridership. That the numbers are just not there. To I guess keep these things going. And some people's argument in this is that that you subsidize these programs, but they never actually, the ridership just never comes, and so I think that's one of the things we're going to have the discussion around is, how do we change people's mindsets about transit? You go to some cities and that's all there is. My wife and I went to Boston, and besides riding the bus from the hotel to the subway or whatever they called it there, I think they called it a subway, but we never got on in a cab. We rode that everywhere around that city, and
Right.
And trust me, when we were on it, I think everybody in the city was on it with us. So that's the sort of thing I think that we're going to have more and more conversation around is how do we change people's mindsets about transit?
Right. Well, and I appreciate that when that conversation, when that comes up, even I think it was a couple of years ago, you are a legislator that is, your area is considered, pockets of it more rural, right, than others, but that you kind of get the big picture of it, and that you are willing to have that conversation, as it relates to transit. So
Yeah.
I think that's,
Well,
yeah.
you certainly want to provide, the ability for people, that need, need that. And you certainly, we hear out in our area, people that need to go to the doctor, need to go different places, and, and they can't get there. And so that's something that certainly, that's something we need to have those conversations around. And as our areas grow, that becomes even more of an issue as we see growth in our in our communities.
Right. So kind of a two-pronged question. One, I know in our discussions with the comptroller, we talked about the fact that they are now collecting kind of the online sales tax, right? So that's a huge, I apologize, I can't remember the actual name of the bill. But that's was
Wayfair bill.
Wayfair bill. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, Wayfair is also where I purchased some furniture and rugs. So I wasn't sure if I'm like, that was in my head, but I'm not so sure if that's the right term. So thank you. So Wayfair, and that is not insignificant considering the onset of COVID and what that has done to kind of help fill some of the sales tax gap that we lost. Can you think of any other, things like that? Kind of the electric vehicle thing falls into that category, right? Where we're not collecting. Is there anything else kind of on your radar that we should be looking at, even if it's not for transportation, but just in general, where we're not capturing funds that we could be very, very well collecting going forward?
Yeah. Nothing, pops right at the top of my head. I mean, I'm not thinking about, I mean, again, the electric vehicle or the alternative fuel vehicle is something that certainly we need to, that's one thing I that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do have one thing that I'm a big, and this doesn't have anything to do with our tax, but we pay our ports, we pay a harbor maintenance tax.
Right.
That is sent to the federal government, and we don't get hardly any of that money back. And that's been one of my big arguments with our congressional folks, our congressmen here in Texas, is that they ought to be scratching and clawing to get that harbor maintenance tax back here into, so that these harbors can be dredged, and that they can be kept. The mobility of our freight and shipping can continue. So that's one that right off the top of my head, if you want to talk about something, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars that
right.
that are collected and sent to the federal government and then not used, so, or not brought back to us. I think they're used in the budget, as general revenue funds, and to me, that's a tax that's collected specifically for harbor maintenance, and it's not being used for that.
Right. Well, I could think of two other issues that, are percolating or always circling, right? So we covered gas tax. We really didn't talk about kind of vehicle registration fee increase. We know that that's still low kind of across the state and, comparatively. Is your sense that kind of all of this is on the table and one may kind of be the leading horse in the race, or there are certain things that they're just not even viable? Is vehicle registration fee is one of them, right? It's just kind of been on the books, even the option to do a local one, right?
Yeah.
Or and bracket more of the counties to do a local one. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
We've certainly had conversations around that. No one has really gotten to the point to where I think we've come up with something that we can get much agreement around. Certainly, again, like I said earlier, the argument that a lot of people make is that, it's a new tax, and it's a new way for money to be brought into the state, and they don't like that. So
Right.
I think that that's going to be, certainly it's one of those items that always gets, I guess, for lack of a better word, sort of kicked around, but we just never get there with it. So I don't know about, this next session. It's going to be, as I said, earlier, it's going to be a different session for us than what I think any of us have ever experienced before.
Right.
And it's going to be one that is going to be, we got a lot of things to do with redistricting. And, I saw today that they extended the census out till October 5th. And,
Right.
And so that, that's going to put us in a situation where I don't know when we'll get those numbers to be able to actually start that process. So it's going to be a really a different legislative session, I think, than what certainly different than what I've ever experienced. Now, there might be some legislators. If you got Speaker Craddock on here, he might be able to tell you about one that would maybe fit into this mold, but I don't even think he would.
Yeah.
I don't think he would be able to go back and do that. So
Right.
this is going to be a tough session. I mean, you've already seen. It's going to be a tough election cycle. It's going to be it's going to be a rough year. I mean, I think everybody's going to look back at 2020 and say, boy, that was one for the books.
Right, for sure. So I do want to direct everybody's attention to the chat. I'm going to put your contact information. Liz was so kind to provide that, remind everybody that, you are always available for conversation, email. So your information is in the chat box if anybody wants to follow up on anything. The other thing is looking at the session, we have our usual traditional advocacy day on the calendar. We don't know what it's going to look like, if we're going to pull you in virtually from the Capitol, or we might have an outdoor something. I don't know, but we look forward to keeping you posted on that day and having you involved in some way. That will be till the end of February. So who knows what things will look like then, right? We take it 1 week at a time. But finally, I'm going to conclude. If you have any predictions on the speaker, if you have any thoughts on that. And we are recording, so.
Okay, yeah. I do know one member that is not up for consideration.
Good.
So we can narrow the field to the other 100.
Okay.
Yeah. There's always conversations around anytime, we're going through a leadership change. I mean, certainly the last one, there was discussion around that, and different people had put their name, I guess, in the hat. So I think as we get closer to get past election day, you're going to see, or get closer to election day, maybe you might see some conversation around that. There's been some names batted around, but truthfully, it depends on who has the majority, and I think that has a lot to do with what happens as far as the speaker goes. So, there's a pretty slim margin there, and a lot of us are being targeted to try and replace for that they want the majority. So there's going to be a lot of push and pull around that. So I certainly wouldn't even start talking about that at this point. I think it's a little premature and to even have that conversation, but it's one that certainly everybody wants to talk about. I mean, it's right. One of those things that
Well, and you've been on transportation through the last 2 speakers, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I was originally under Speaker Strauss, and then Speaker Bonin continued, allowed me to continue on transportation. So, and I'm hoping that, we get an opportunity to continue. I've really enjoyed being a part of that and you know, it's a learning process. It's a process that sometimes can be, well, more times than not can be frustrating, but then it also can be very rewarding when you have an opportunity to be involved. And you know, when we were working on the 288 project, and you know, there were some issues there, and you know, there was some discussion around whether or not the flowers would be put in, and you know, we went and advocated to TxDOT and to the Speaker's office. That was when Speaker Strauss was still there, and you know, then the flowers got put back in the project. So you know, those are things that you look back on and you think, you know, those are wins, and things that you are very proud of those wins, because I think it's going to make a big difference in the viability of that project, as well as the transportation needs of you know, of this area.
Right. Well, we thank you for all of your service. I think it does say a lot that you've remained on that committee through 2 speakers, and we've appreciated your support of transportation through all of that service and your time today.
Yeah.
And we look forward to, you know, staying in touch as more information becomes available on all fronts. And we wish you, you and your family and your staff, you know, health and safety as we kind of navigate all of this. And we hope that you can tune in for some of your colleagues,
Yeah.
you know, throughout
Yeah.
as you can. So I mentioned, we've got Armando Wally next Tuesday, talking about some of the COVID stuff. So again, thank you so much, Representative, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I want to just say one other thing. You know, I always tell people, you know, I don't know what I don't know. And it's important that, you know, that this community does give me input. I learn something every day, and I enjoy learning that, and I enjoy having conversation with people. So don't be shy about sharing your thoughts. You know, even if you think, well, he's going to think this is crazy. I'm not. I really enjoy hearing from people about these issues, and it's a way for me to, you know, to get better. The old saying, you know, iron sharpens iron, and I think those conversations and discussions are very, very important. So, you know, I appreciate the input that we do get, and appreciate the friendships that I've had with the transportation community, and look forward to working to better that here in this region and in the state of Texas.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. And with that, we'll close our program, and we wish everybody to have a great day today. And we'll see you back here next Tuesday.